Okay, this is a very relevant topic. I think of all the different sessions today, maybe I have to be biased, but I feel that this is indeed the most important topic. As you have seen, that our Prime Minister has just launched My Digital last Friday. It is a whole nation approach towards digital transformation, and the objective is very clear. It is meant for the country to get the true boost in order to achieve that new breakthrough. Breakthrough out of that middle income trap, out of that stagnation, out of the over-reliance on resources, and also foreign workers, to name a few. And of course, I could say this now, as I'm also the National Council member of the digital economy and the 4IR chaired by the PM. So this is the council that has charted the direction and endorsed this and finally launched by the Prime Minister. We are very hopeful that My Digital offers new light for the country. And I would just want to highlight one more time, it has to be a whole nation approach because it has 6 strategic thrusts from digital government, very major shift towards cloud and big data. And in fact, in that blueprint, you can see that in these 2 years, 80% of the government data shall be moved to cloud and shall also go into the mode of interoperability and sharing. And then digital talent is also given very strong recognition in terms of the various plan, funding, methodology. Third one is the digital infrastructure. We have also seen 21 billion ringgit in Jendela to roll out the fiber infrastructure to cover majority of the homes with the fiber and also to increase the 4G connectivity from 91% to 96% in the next 2 years, and to top it up, to have a special purpose vehicle to roll out the 5G working in complement together with all the rest of the telcos. Digital society that will see digital ID and widespread usage of e-payment and so forth. And of course, we have this the emerging technology trust, of which it is to select, to evaluate, and to roll out those emerging technology, of which the topics today has suggested that the big data, AI, of course, anything to do with e-commerce, 4IR, blockchain, they're part and parcel of it as well. Well, and lastly will be digital economy, whereby across all the sectors, all the industries to be digitally enabled. All right, so that would be the 6 trusts. And I think today we're going to hear the insights from our very eminent speakers today. I think there are a lot of introduction already in the earlier, what they call that, communication with all the participants. So I would not want to kind of take up too much time, but to describe that, we're going to have 2 parts. The first part will be with the speaker 1, Fitri, and then the speaker 2, Chye. Both are also very long-term industry friends. I will use the word. And then the second part will be by the also industry friends. This is Matthew Chen as well as Dato Henry Go. All right. So with that quick backdrop, I'm going to invite Fitri to share your thoughts and insights about this topic.
Okay. Thank you, Dato, and also again, good afternoon. Also, Gongsi Pat Choi. So before I share my views, I think just some updates on Oracle Malaysia. Oracle is the 2nd largest software company in the world, currently number 6 as far as cloud service provider worldwide in terms of revenue. And we provide end-to-end cloud solutions from the software as a service, platform as a service, and also infra as a service. And Our back-end SaaS for finance and also for HR is leading the market in a worldwide basis. So if you look at Oracle Malaysia, we've been here since '87. And I joined about 4.5 years ago as the MD for Oracle, mainly two things. One was the digital transformation that's happening, and cloud computing will play a very big role. So that was very interesting for me to join Oracle at that time. And the second part was Oracle was investing into Malaysia in 2017. So we set up a digital hub in Kuala Lumpur where we hired about close to 200 people, I think, serving the region, I think from Kuala Lumpur. And in 2019, we added another 150 people, senior technical people, consultants into our hub. And the good news is we are adding another 100 jobs. It is a financial hub. I think that we will support quite a few countries. The go live will be by July of this year. So we are expanding into Malaysia. So our experience so far working with our key customers in Malaysia include CIMB Bank, where we work with them very closely. In fact, it has gone live for their HR transformation over a year ago. The whole 36,000 employees for CIMB Bank using our cloud-based software as a service. Currently, we are embarking on a HR transformation with Petronas, the largest company in Malaysia. And the target go live date will be in August, replacing SAP HR. Also on HR, we have done transformation for Group in terms of Plus and also Agenta. Air Asia also gone through a digital transformation for their finance and procurement, including Selangor, a state-backed company for both finance, procurement, and also HR. One interesting project that I wanted to share is we are actually will complete by early April, will be with Pharma Niaga. We are implementing an IoT fleet management to manage their cold chain distribution of the vaccine. So we will not be involved in the Pfizer one, but we will be that system will be used for the Sinovac vaccine that will come in a bit later. So that project is interesting because that project basically uses IoT, uses machine learning, and also autonomous database, and which is very relevant in terms of what you're seeing in terms of IR 4.0. Also to note that Oracle with the cloud side, we also acquired a company called Netsuite. And Netsuite is a cloud company that provides financial solution strictly for SME. So companies like, we got about 60 plus companies, so like people like Fashion Valley, Dux, Kawan Food that distributes roti canai worldwide. Chong Chicken, iFlix, Soka, even Green Packet is our customer from the SME side. So from my perspective, obviously, we have challenges in terms of this COVID health crisis, which has a very big impact on our economy. And as Dato shared, I think clearly, the launch of My Identity, which is the Malaysia's digital economy, I think is a big boost for the nation and also all the businesses and also the people. I think that's a fantastic boost, I think, at this time. And also the good part is the vaccine is here. The vaccination program has just will start this Wednesday going forward. So despite all the glooms and the direct correlation between the health and economic crisis, we do have two positives that's happening. We have a nationwide digital economy plan going forward. And also we have that vaccine plan that is being rolled out. So in a sense, I am quite optimistic going forward. And from Oracle perspective, actually, we are a beneficiary from the COVID side because clearly the acceleration for digital will happen a lot faster. So that's all I wanted to do, a bit of an introduction and also some perspective at a high level. So I will leave it, pass back to the floor back to Dato Wei.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Fitri. So well within the 8 minutes. All right.
Yes.
We do have some interesting question coming up.
Sure.
Now, so let's move on to Chye, who will also give us a perspective, the digital post-COVID-19 challenges and opportunities. Right, Chye, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dato. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay, so let me just start by saying that when I was asked to speak about this topic, I was wondering, what is there to say anymore? You know, it is here. We have been living in this whole digitalization over the last 1 year. And digital disruption started 10 years ago with the emergence of Uber, Airbnb, Netflix, etc., etc. And we all know that knowledge-based economy, data-driven economy has already begun. And as recent as 4 or 5 years ago, the term data is the new oil or the new natural resource is a very well-accepted fact. So when I was asked to speak about this, I was thinking to myself, what more can I say? Right? Over the last 1 year, a lot of acceleration has happened. My 80-year-old mother was comfortable buying fish and vegetables online. My 85-year-old mother-in-law plays mahjong virtually. Every day, DHL, Ninja Van, Grab, they're all my regular visitors during the COVID period. So it's like, e-commerce is everywhere. Everyone is using online. My niece came back from Australia. She's attending university online. I'm like, what is there to say? It's like, it's everywhere. Now, that is at the surface. As some of you may know, if you read my bio, I'm actually on the board of Bursa. I'm also on the board of Hong Leong Bank and Hong Leong Financial Group. Now, we are being in the capital and the financial market. We are very close to what's happening in the industry. I will say that I take my hats off to industries like telco, capital market, and also banks, because admirably, they have actually handled the crisis of COVID so well that it's almost seamless. You don't really feel it. We don't hear of cases where you call the bank and no one's answering the phone. Don't want to mention the countries, but some countries have the experience that for days on end, people are not able to get through to their banks. Now, we don't have that problem in Malaysia. But I will say that it has something to do with data maturity. For the past, I think 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, banks have invested a lot in the digital transformation. There has been a study that said that the organizations that invested in data transformation, digital transformation, they have weathered the crisis much better than those who didn't. So clearly, when you look at healthcare, if you look at education, to a large extent, I think they have not digitalized as quickly as banking, for example. So I think that from my observation, if you talk about opportunities in e-commerce and online services, it will continue to grow. By association, logistic companies, all the delivery companies will also continue to grow. Greater automation will be deployed, thereby reducing the need for low-cost labor. Blockchain will be deployed to build a more robust and transparent supply chain. IoT will be deployed to more pervasively, I will say, we already deployed somewhat, to collect data and connect devices. Platform providers will continue to leverage on digitalization to expand their market. And we will see the emergence of data aggregators. Now, I sit on the board of Bursa, so I can say that just yesterday, the CEO of Bursa talks about collaborating with fintechs. So companies like Bursa and many others, we can play the role of data aggregators. We will be able to combine data and provide end-to-end visibility to consumers and corporate buying and share corporate buying behaviors. I believe that granularity of analysis will increase, and even SMEs will adopt analytics provided by data aggregators, obviously. For corporate, I think intelligent analytics will be an absolute necessity to survive this competition. Let me just share a little bit because, obviously I come from on the banking board. Over the last couple of months, there has been a rampant and sophisticated cyber attacks. So while we see proliferation of digital usage, we have to be very careful because cybersecurity crimes are now targeting new users and users who are not sophisticated. So they get phished, they get scammed very easily. So we got to watch out for cybersecurity. And I believe that while I say that healthcare and education is lagging, I believe that online services will grow and technologies like augmented reality, virtual reality will be deployed to enhance the services. Now, on the risks and challenges, cybersecurity threat, as I mentioned, will become more rampant. They will really attack not only the new users, but also attack security gatekeepers. The case of SolarWind and FireEye, I'm sure you all have read about it. And we believe that the pandemic actually exposed the fragility of our supply chain. So really got to think about how do we reduce the single point of failure for supply chains. You know, when China shut down, all our electrical equipments couldn't be delivered. For Chinese New Year, I didn't get the new oven that I ordered, for example. And finally, Dato Wei spoke about talent. We are very short of talent. So workforce disruption is going to happen due to automation, and the steep learning curve to skill up and exploit technology will have to happen. All said, it will be exciting times ahead, and it is my belief that with my digital agenda, our country will strive to bridge the digital divide and lift the people to that level of savviness. The saying "innovate or die" applies now more than ever, but it will take a lot of courage to change. So with that, I'll end my session. Back to you, Dato Wei.
Thank you, Chinese. All are, very kind of concise, but very strong to the point. And I couldn't help but also to have the feeling that we are maybe talking to the convert, because we all are strong believers of the my digital. Now, to the audience, I would like to invite you to ask a question in this first part for the first two speakers. We have the next 10 minutes, up to 15 minutes of those question and answer. Now, I have the first question. You see, when we talk about talking to the convert, it means people who truly believe in digitalization and adoption of technology and adoption of that kind of innovative so-called solution. This morning, we have heard of the panel speakers in the economic outlook session that recovery may vary. Was it predicted to be a V-shape or W-shape? And the data shows that it is actually, interestingly, a K-shape. K-shape simply means divergence. Some companies actually through the crisis has become a lot more stronger, robust, and therefore they can be competing with the world's best. In terms of productivity and ability to compete, they are there. However, K is actually about divergence, right? Some are actually not just falling behind, but they may actually fall out of the entire marketplace permanently. So there lies the need to have the acute awareness of that pattern, and who's going to make that so-called real change happen. So my question is about how do we actually bring the awakening of digital leadership as opposed to the normal leadership, whereby it's about leading the people, of course, giving vision, aligning their interests and all this. They are all important. Now, digital leadership in this era, what in my understanding would be those that could actually explore technology, embrace technology, exploit technology, combined with the rest of the leadership trait and ability, right? So I'd like to channel this question first to Chinese. In the context of Bursa, since all the rest of the members of the Bursa are listed companies, how well do you think those companies are kind of having that so-called ability to lead the country into the digital transformation? How strong would be their digital leadership, and what can be done?
So I think, Dato, as you correctly mentioned, we are converts here. So there are many people out there who are still lagging behind in terms of digitalization. From a Bursa perspective, obviously, a lot of education is ongoing, number one. Number two, as I mentioned about data aggregation, I think that data sits everywhere. Someone has to pull them together and make sense, right? Because if you don't have data in a I call it aligned manner, the data is useless. So companies, not just Bursa, but companies like telcos and banks, they are in ownership of a lot of data. How do they use the data to actually help organizations to give them the platform to I would say, put the toe in, for want of a better word, if they have not already embarked on the digital transformation. So I do believe that not just Bursa, not just the government, but organizations like telco, like banks, and you have seen some banks already doing it. They come out with special digital packages for SMEs. They provide platform, local, right? For you, those of me, I don't want to mention the bank, right? Since I'm on the other bank. So local, for example, you can actually order local products and services online through the bank, through the bank's portal. So today, a lot of the big boys, a lot of the converts have the capability to bring the smaller organizations on board. Facebook, for example, we have a marketplace. I'm not sure I don't know how many of you, because I notice all of guys here, but for the ladies, for us, we have to put food on the table, for my family. And I find that Facebook very quickly through Facebook, a lot of market platform aggregators came together, and suddenly I realized that there are opportunities for all these very small players. You can order mua otak online, you can order ipo hofan, you can order jagong from Cameron Highland, all through these aggregators. And it's not a sophisticated tool, it is just a group of people coming to Facebook, putting their offerings on their what do you call that, their page, and then people order. So what I realized is that this whole thing about e-commerce and digitalization scale from very big organizations to very small organizations. And even big organizations today, some of them are not as agile as some of the smaller ones. So really, to me, the play and the role is widespread. Not just government, not just big companies, not just companies like Bursa, but every organization that touches consumers and corporate clients can actually play that role.
Well, thank you, Chanil. Looks like I think you are pointing out some of the glaring example that could be the inspiration for the rest of the companies to emulate. All right. Continuing on the question, I'd like to forward this to Fitri. For a business, in fact, this is actually coming from the floor, from a Facebook Live, actually. For a business intending to start its digitalization journey, what are those first few steps to start with? Now, Fitri, in fact, I'd like to add an element. What role would a digital leader play here in that so-called the start of the journey towards digitalization?
Yeah, so I would say that clearly, I think in Malaysia, SME is a big area. About 98% of business entities are SME, and then 65% of the workforce is from the SME segment, and about 30% of the GDP is from SME. So I would say that for everybody, clearly I think there is that big push for SME to adopt digital, or else they will fall off the wayside. So that's important from the SME side. I think if you look at my identity, I think there's going to be a big push at the government level going forward. So if you look at it, I think it's important for any business person, when you are running a business, you need to do a current state assessment, where you are against your competitors, and also your ability to provide digital services. I think that's what you need to do an assessment. I do believe, I think people like MITI do provide some free services on digital assessment and all that. So all that I think is very important. I think there are some help from the government, but I think you as a business owner need to do your own assessment to see where you are. And then obviously the whole world is moving towards digital. So I think it's important for you to look at it, and then have a plan. Obviously there are consultants to help you out also. So I think that's important. And clearly, I think if you look at it in the end, the mobile phone will be the main device where people will transact. So be it as an employee or as a customer. And you need to make sure that you're able to provide those digital services on the handphone going forward. So those are my perspective, that for any company embarking on that digital journey, I believe, I think you need to work out all those business imperatives going forward. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Fitri. So as a business owner or leader, do the assessment and take that kind of initiative moving forward, right? Now, the subsequent question is also from the floor. It is about providing the digital talent, digital literacy here in Malaysia as well as in ASEAN. Maybe I expand a little bit. You see, when people work in any organization, chances is that they will have to use the various system, be it from, of course, we have read that some of your background, you may come from the IBM, from Oracle, from HP, from SAP, from Cisco, Huawei, or different cloud services, right? So now, how would people be trained and quickly be equipped with the kind of competencies here in Malaysia as well as ASEAN, so that they can be productive in their wherever the workplace?
Would you like me to take that?
Yes. In fact, for both of you, so that can have let's say a minute or two each on this.
Okay, yeah. Let me just say a little bit about this, because I'm very passionate about talent, right? And I think that what I've seen lately has been so encouraging. In Bursa and Hong Leong as well. And in fact, when I was in IBM, we encourage what we call bite-sized education. If you want to start educating yourselves on technology, and it's a huge 4-year course, you go to university. By the time you graduate, whatever you learn is no longer relevant. So what we encourage really for technology kind of skills, you really got to go bite-sized. So, for example, if you have got courses that, for me personally, late at night, I usually go 20 minutes online, and then I will go through some of the latest, what's happening in the market, what are all the latest technologies. When I was in IBM, we actually have really a structured journey, our own technology development journey, where we have a database that keeps all of our training, and then we know where we are with regards to, what skills we have picked up, what we have not. And then we also have cybersecurity education twice a year. Now within Bursa and also in Hong Leong, I've also seen that the management team have embarked on what they call bite-sized learning. So that's one, quick, agile, and current. No point learning something that happened 2 years ago. Second point I want to talk about, which is really, I was really very passionate about when I was in IBM, but of course I've retired now, is that there is a need to start educating at the school level. Don't start at university level. So in many countries like the Philippines, in Singapore, in Thailand, we have seen them putting technology, really not the mechanical skills, but technology and digital skills from the onset, in school. Start them in school. Don't start them later, too late in the journey. Again, this is not something that you learn and then you forget about it. It's something that you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn. And I learned after 30 years in the industry, 30 over years in the industry, is that if you are a technology expert, you will never be the expert forever, right? If you are a doctor, for example, after treating many patients, you may become an expert in a particular disease. But if you are technologists, and this is what I learned very early in my career, every 6 months you're obsolete. Every 6 months. So thank goodness I'm not a technologist at the end of my career, so I went into management. But for those who are in the technology line, if you don't refresh every 6 months, you're obsolete. So it's not really, this is a level playing field. So someone who has not been in the technology field, don't feel discouraged, because having 20, 30 years in the IT industry means nothing. Whatever I learned 30 years ago is irrelevant today. So you still have the opportunity to pick your skills today and be relevant.
Okay.
Right. Fitri.
Okay. Before I start, I think a reply just to tell Chye and also the rest that the CEO for Oracle is Safra Katz. She's a lady. So diversity is very important in Oracle. Just to let you know. And also Hong Leong Bank is also our customer for finance and procurement on our public cloud. Okay, so now on the topic, according to the World Economic Forum report for jobs in October 2020, lists out the number of jobs that will go away and replaced by a lot of the new digital jobs. So it is important that I think for all of us, I think, and especially our college students coming out, that they need to make sure that they are not graduating for those jobs that will be obsoleted, but all the new jobs that will come in, I think, influence dramatically through the digital side. Something interesting to note that the key challenge as we embark on this digital journey at the country and company level is about the challenges about skills in terms of retraining the skills and how do you reskill the workforce for the new area, as well as the people coming in, I think, from college. So that's very important. And in Oracle, we actually work very closely with the universities. I think, especially with the new batch of computer scientists graduating. And what I see is, unfortunately, a lot of the students that are graduating are on the old technology, on-prem, no cloud. They're not working on blockchain. They're not working on AI. They're not working on machine learning and all that. So that I think needs to be addressed. And the other perspective is down south. Our the small island below Malaysia, they have overall philosophy on lifelong learning that they have embarked on, and they have an organization called Skills Future, where every citizen is given a budget yearly for training, including to learn how to do a good nasi lemak or nasi ayam or whatever it is, including digital skills. So I think there are some learnings that I think the main principle is that in all of us, that concept of lifelong learning, I think, needs to be there. I think that should be a part of the My Identity program for digital, and we need to look at it holistically. I think not just the technology people, but also the senior citizens and all that, so that nobody is left behind. So that's my perspective.
Wow, powerful. So looks like I think we could just quickly sum up in these two lines. The post-COVID digital future for Malaysia lies in our ability to harness the power of digital leadership, make assessment, take the right initiative forward, and also use a lot of data for our decision, and have some inspiring icon in the country to kind of get the rest going as well. And lastly, it is to have that kind of a bite-sized lifelong learning. With that, I hope that we can move forward into a bright My Digital Future. Thank you for the first.
High level, I think Dato Wei, you are spot on. And what we need to do is on the execution. Obviously, the details is in the execution.
Details in execution with the digital talent, with the right competencies, and continuously learn. Right. Thank you. I'd like to thank our first two panel speakers, Fitri and as well as Chye. And with that, we are going to move on to the second part of our topic here, similar topic. And I will see that the dimension will be slightly different, as we will be talking more on the model, on the technology. And with us today, we have two very prominent speakers, very qualified. First is the Matthew Chen, who is the CEO for the Sunline and International Business Group. And second, we have Dato Henry Goh, who is the co-founder and COO of MACROKIOSK. All right. So without further ado, as it is, I would want to take for granted that you could read their very lengthy, very credible profile from the material that we sent to you. So therefore, I'm going to invite Matthew to take the floor for 8 minutes. And likewise, subsequently, for Dato Henry Goh for another 8 minutes. Then we will do the second round of question and answer. Right. Matthew, please.
Yeah, thanks, Dato Wei. And thanks for KSI for inviting me. First of all, happy Chinese New Year to everyone. Apologize for my virtual background. So speaking of technology, right, there's a little bit of techie glitch. You're actually looking at my Australian home. So it's not virtual, it's my real background. So for some of you actually do not know who is Sunline, I believe Dato Wei actually have one slide. Is it possible someone can project it?
Yes, Naeem, and
Yeah.
also our
Yes, give me
yeah.
a second. Yeah, just for all of you that who do not know who is Sunline, we are actually the largest core banking software house from China, based out of Shenzhen. 4 years ago, we actually set up Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur to be precise, as our regional hub for the Southeast Asia region, right? So that's who we are, where we're from. And, you know, obviously we are talking about, you know, the post-COVID economic recovery, right? Especially how we're going to use technology, right? So everyone talking about the ABCDs, right? So the AI, blockchain, cloud computing, and big data. How are we going to use that to, you know, to help economies in Malaysia, particularly to recover from the COVID? Yeah, so I'm going to actually share a little platform that we actually developed in China. I like to call it the ecology trifecta, right? If you can move on to the next slide, please. It's just one slide. So this is actually how we use the so-called ABCD technologies in China, right? So what you're looking at, I call it a Finline platform. Is actually a B2B2C platform that we launched together with Tencent back in 2019. So what we did, you know, everyone obviously knows that WeChat is a super app in China, right? Which commands more than 1 billion users in China. So almost every single Chinese people on this planet use a WeChat. And I'm not sure whether all of you know that there is a mini program. It's almost like a little open portal, like a little app within the app. It's called mini program. So anyone can actually publish their app within the WeChat. So you don't have to manage too many apps, right? So what we did, we built a digital core banking platform inside the WeChat through the mini program. So basically the idea is really to join, I mean, what you're looking at is really to join, you know, all the platform, you know, fintech players on the left-hand side with the conventional banks on the right-hand side, right? You know, obviously we are not talking about, you know, large banks like Bank of China, Ping An Bank, and like we're talking about a lot of, actually, I like to call them underdogs, a disadvantaged little banks. They also like to tap into this 1 billion WeChat users, which they cannot. They don't have the expertise, they don't have the money, IT resources, and so on and so forth. So the platform we built actually helped the conventional bank to tap into this WeChat platform through the mini program open portal, right? So, you know, just give you some stats. We obviously launched the platform in 2019, and then guess what? You know, the end of 2019, beginning of last year, you know, COVID hit China first, right? So some of the interesting stats that, you know, I like to share with you, in terms of the micro loans that actually issued on this platform in Q1 alone, which is really, you know, at a peak. The COVID is actually at a peak in China. There are 175 million of loans, micro loans issued on this platform, you know, from the banks through to all these underbanked populations in the WeChat community. And 343 smart saving products also issued. I'm actually talking about from the conventional banks to the WeChat ecosystem. You know, of course, throughout the year, you know, in the entire year of last year, we log on all the other platform players such as, you know, e-commerce, travel, accommodation, e-hailing, you know, entertainment, social media, health, whatever you name it, right? So today there are about 28 conventional banks, but plus about 23 fintech companies, you know, live and kicking in this platform. In Q4, some of the stats in Q4, you know, there are about more than 600 million micro loans issued from these 28 conventional banks into this ecosystem, and over a billion worth of micro saving products, you know, are issued, right? So the stats obviously phenomenal. You know, you might want to say, you know, what is that got to do with Malaysia, right? So obviously Malaysia does not have a super app such as WeChat. In Malaysia, we probably need to work a whole number of platform players. I actually believe that, I think some of the speakers I mentioned, because it's all about data and also about collaboration. You know, how you join the data between the conventional banks and the telcos together with all these tech giants as well as the fintech players, right? How you join the data and analyze data, make sense and monetize data to help the underserved, you know, the underserved individual as well as SME. And I believe that in Malaysia, you know, SME is the key. You know, so we need to work. Actually, we are currently, you know, cooking up project with, you know, one bank, particularly in Malaysia, and then also one telco company in Malaysia, and starting with that, and hopefully join them, you know, with the SME community by building this, you know, platform in the middle, right? Because we believe it takes three parties to dance. You know, the traditional B2C model doesn't work. It's proven to be failing in China. You need another platform in the middle as a bridge to help to connect, to help to collaborate, and also help to monetize the data using all the ABCD technology that is readily available to our fingertips, right? So, you know, it's actually just good timing that, you know, the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, signed at the end of last year. I think Malaysia can actually ride on this wave and lead this wave, and hopefully can foster a regional trade corridors, especially for the SME that are in need of finance, who are not actually included in the finance world right now, and then to foster the cross-border trade corridors, right? So I pause it there. Back to you, Dato Wei.
All right, thank you, Matthew. So it looks like you immediately jump ahead into suggesting that there are some models for Malaysia to look into. All right, we'll come to that in a short while, perhaps in our Q&A session. Next, we would like to hear from Dato Henry Goh about this topic on the digital post-COVID-19 challenges and opportunities with the AI, big data, e-commerce, blockchain, and so forth, right? Dr. Henry, go please.
Hi, Dato Wei. Thanks for the introduction, and of course, thanks for hosting this session, and thanks for having me again. Yeah, I mean, definitely an exciting situation. You know, I think especially, you know, it was mentioned that everyone now is on digital environment. You know, everyone knows how to use the phone. Everyone is very good on social media and things like that. So I think generally the population, the people in Malaysia, we are all very well versed with digital technologies and how to use them. I think the main situation now is really then how can commerce take place, or how can we, what we call, monetize this situation by corporate companies in order to benefit out of this digital technology or digital economy itself. I think COVID does, in a way, give a little bit of springboard. I mean, especially just to share a little bit about my company, MACROKIOSK. We do provide services to probably about 40 different banks around the region. In Malaysia, we have probably about 95% of the banking market utilizing our platform and our services. And from there, I mean, we can see that there's a big surge in terms of people moving online, and they use a lot more transactions, be it online banking or for e-commerce and what's not. And we can see that transactions growing very quickly, especially, you know, times where usually you do see the spikes in e-commerce transactions only during things like the 12/12 e-commerce day or the 11/11 e-commerce day. But then now we can see that it happens almost every other day, you know, so which is good. But generally, of course, I also do think is that this is just a sudden growth, and I think it might drop back a little bit, and when things goes back to a little bit normal. But the good part is that we do see that people now knows and they have actually enjoyed the benefit of online and online digital itself. But having said that, say it's moving, but then I think we can see that corporate Malaysia still lags behind, especially the SMEs, in terms of how can they leverage on technology. I think like Chen has talked about, people are selling on Facebook. I think it's good. I think there's something, but then I believe there's also a very stopgap measure itself, because the COVID happened so quickly and they just need to find a place to sell the stuff. But I think generally in the longer term, adoption of digitalization by enterprises will need a more clearer blueprint and also a clearer direction in terms of how they can adopt it. And I think also I think there's also a point that how they can leverage technologies to actually try to leverage on this digital technology, which is still very, very vast. It's not just about selling things online. It's about trying to make the supply chain better. It's about making the operations more efficient. It's also trying to sell things more efficiently. So I think in that retrospective, I would say is that COVID gave a big boost in terms of digital adoption due to needs, not because of it's not because they really want it, but sometimes they have to, I would say, most of companies that we talk to. But then, of course, after that post-COVID, I believe they then see the benefit of digitalization. However, a lot of them are only digitalizing at the very surface level. Still, there are a lot of deep dive that needs to happen. And I also believe there will be a lot of SMEs going back to the non-digital way when the things goes back to normal. So I think, how do we retain these people? How do we then expose them to these new technologies so that they will adopt it and they try to leverage itself? I think the government came up with things like I think there are some matching grant and things like that. It's really good, but I think the delivery needs to improve, how to deliver that thing properly. So I think, or efficiently, I think that's important. And I really think there's more that needs to be done in terms of how we can encourage digital technology and to have it in a more wholesome way rather than just the surface of trying to survive due to the COVID-19 at this point in time. Yeah. So, I mean, we are open to the Q&A, but yeah, back to you, Dato Wei.
All right, thank you. Right, so now we have received some questions from the floor. I'm going to kind of move into this first question from Rafiq Jamaboy. First one. Hi, Matthew. How do you protect Malaysia? It's not taken over by China. So that Malaysia is not taken over by China through the data using your platform, since Tencent is your partner. I think it's going to be that kind of question that may surface every now and then. So I just want to bring it up first for Matthew to address.
We are first of all, we're not building a Tencent platform in Malaysia. Like I mentioned, we're working with one bank in Malaysia and another telecom company in Malaysia. But to answer your question in another way, right? So this is actually a very interesting topic, because I don't know whether you guys, I'm actually in Australia right now, right? I don't know whether you guys noticed the news, what happened with Facebook in Australia last week. Some of you might pay attention, some of you might not. But basically, the government is proposing some sort of regulation to charge the tech giants to pay for the medias, right? Which are struggling in Australia. And Facebook, playing a bit of bully, right? So they say, no, I'm not going to do that. So if I have to pay, I'm going to pull out. So just a few days ago, everything blacked out, all the news link blacked out from Facebook. So obviously they're still negotiating. So the example I'm giving you, maybe there's another example probably relevant more to your question. There's a tech giant in China called Alibaba, right? So you might have heard last year, that there's a giant IPO, the Ant Financial IPO. It was killed in the cradle, right? So what happened? All of these things I think actually are good things that are happening with these tech giants is governments start to step in, right? So governments start to step in to regulate. And because because technology itself can become so disruptive. Talk about blockchain. Blockchain, you don't need a government. You don't need a bank, because the trust issue is dealt away with technology, with all the encryption. So we don't need a bank to exist anymore, right? But guess what's happened with all the dark web, with all the the money laundering, with all the bad things, right? This is a bad application, an evil application of technology. So government need to play a very, very key role. Right. So coming back to Malaysia. So I think in order to prevent, these kind of tech giants, like you said, taking over, data is the key, right? So Malaysia government need to step in, and they need to embrace technology, need to understand and master and embrace technology. Obviously, I spent the last 30 years dealing with banks, right? So in a bank's point of view, from a bank point of view, the Central Bank Malaysia, again, need to do exactly the similar role. And because this is the new norm, right? Talking about new normal, technology, all the ABCD will be the new normal. So all the regulators need to fully embrace and master this. And in order to keep data safe in Malaysia and regulated by Malaysian, right? And that's the way to protect. So no technology can overtake Malaysia if data is protected. And the data has to be locally reside in Malaysia, regulated by the right authority of Malaysian government. So that's my answer to you, a bit long way away. Hopefully
thank you. Thank you, Matthew. So I'm going to kind of draw upon some of the, there's one previous question that would be relevant right now. That is about cybersecurity. Since you have touched on the data, and earlier China has also touched on the data, how, government, the perception is that maybe not as so-called strong or good in protecting their data. That's actually the perception that was actually forwarded from the floor. So how would the private sector provide that kind of input and perhaps lend some of the expertise to the government? Could we hear from Dato Henry Goh and then subsequently Matthew, please, about how to actually support or help government in that cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think the point is that it's always a very difficult or gray line in terms of we want to expose the country to the latest technology, and yet we want to control how we utilize data. I think that's really very difficult. But I think the point is that there must be certain kind of framework that needs to be established by the government in order to advise technology companies and also advise the general population, I would say, in terms of how do we then say what kind of data should be safeguarded and who should own this data. I mean, not really a regulation, but rather should be an advisory framework in terms of how that needs to be done and what kind of data can be made available and where should it be made available. I think that's very important. So it opens a guideline to foreign investors, foreign technology firms, and also the local firms, so that we know that what data should be safeguarded, I think, by itself. I think that's one very important part of data. But of course, data nationalism is also happening really strongly, especially you can see that US and China itself, they are competing in terms of a global war and how do we save. But hopefully the new president thinks a different thing for US. But yeah, I think a framework will help in terms of advise what is needed and what is not needed. But I think the feeling of the population thinking that their data will be lost to a third world country or third party country, I think it will always happen. But then generally, who do we believe? I mean, we are putting data on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So what's so different about then say data going to China and data going to the US? I think that's about the same thing. But then I think it's more like having advisory and framework available for people and for the companies and for technology companies to follow.
All right, thank you. Chanyo, if you're there, would you like to quickly jump in for a quick word about the cybersecurity?
Yes, I just typed in something because I got to run off. Yeah, just have one thing to say. I think that for us to be able to protect data, we really got to find a way to automate what I call back-end data analytics, because hackers and cybersecurity fraudsters use a lot of automation pattern, a lot of trends to help them identify where are the weak spots in organizations. So I really want to talk about back-end analytics. Very, very important. We need to make sure we use AI and we use big data, study trends and patterns, and make sure that we protect, for example, like banks, we got to protect your clients. If the clients have put money in the bank, we trust the bank to keep our money safe. And I think that organizations like banks, governments, whoever who keeps the data needs to take the responsibility to ensure that the data is protected. And the only way is to use AI and big data analytics, no other way, because you have to automate. You cannot have people eyeballing transactions. You've got to use data analytics and AI. So that's all I have to say. I apologize. I really got to go off.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chanyo. We know that you need to go already. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Right. So I would like to kind of continue this question with Matthew as well. The cybersecurity, that the measure that the government can take.
I think this is probably going back to your leadership question, right? Because I think in terms of digital leadership, government and regulators need to play instrumental role in safeguard the data security, the quality as well as the security of the data. So I think in terms of the digital transformation of Malaysia, I think the digital leadership coming from the government, different segment of the government. For banks, obviously, it's a central bank, the regulator is going to play they're probably going to rewrite the regulations, because, and that's probably why Jack Ma got hammered, right? He's talking about Basel IIIs and all of those things. But he has a valid point, though. You cannot, the banking world cannot rely on the old, the so-called GRC, right? The government's risk management and compliance. Obviously, you need to build upon that, but you need to really transform. Embrace, be brave enough to open up and embrace this technology, because there's no going back, right? So short answer is, I think digital leadership, government, and also the regulator is going to play a key role in safeguarding the securities. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not a technology question, because technology, to me, all the ABCDs, they are neutral. They're just a toolkit. How you apply them, you can apply them in a good way or in an evil way, right? So that is the key.
Right, thank you. Next, I'm going to combine two questions into one. The question is about, those who are reluctant or refuse to digitalize. There are some reasons behind that. Of course, we'd like to also invite your kind of input. And what are those models or business models, or that kind of use the technology that would allow them to look at how to achieve breakthrough, right? What are those thinking around the model, and especially to address those who are reluctant to digitalize? I'd like to start with Dr. Henry Goh, please.
Yeah, I think the reason for digitalization happens when the COVID happens. So I think it's kind of like the virus became the only reason for digitalization for many companies due to survivability. But I think I shared earlier, I think the government initiative of having the matching grant or the grant for digitalization is a good initiative. And I think this does encourage people to go digitalization, and they can try it out in a way that is a bit more risk-free. So in the sense that if it's not working well, I think the government take out the grant in a kind of situation, but it does help in that sense. So I think that's quite good in terms of convincing people to try without having to incur much cost or no cost at all. I think the other part is also in the sense that there are a lot of SaaS-based or solutions as a service kind of companies around where they can actually utilize these services on a trial basis, on a usage basis, which is then minimize their costs. I mean, it's not like usually previously where you need to buy major computers, equipment, and stuff like that. So these things are new technologies that are available that will encourage them to go digitalization. I think generally what's available now, the market is really there. Is more like in terms of people like say MDAC or say even to a certain extent people like Magic, for example, is to then try to have a lot more education kind of sharing in terms of what maybe is like going around and to tell people there's more awareness in terms of digitalization and how to digitalize and what they can digitalize on. I think these are things that these are workshops and probably trainings that can be available. And as I say, the good part is that COVID allows, COVID actually pushed people to accept digitalization, and a lot of them open mind to it. But most of the time, people give up because they do not know how to do it. And I think agencies like MDAC, for example, would be very helpful if they can provide awareness in terms of digitalizing and giving them education how this is being done. Rather than just say go and sell and put on Shopee or put on Lazada and things. I think that's just very, very surface usage of digitalization.
Yeah. Thank you. So Matthew, is there any suggestion of the model or technology adoption that could actually help those who are reluctant?
I always say that, Dr. Wei, this line, right? People's behaviors probably are the most difficult things to change, because we all tend to, be very comfortable in our own comfort zone, right? But look at China, why China becomes so digitalized, the cashless society, digital economy, or now we call it contactless, right? is everywhere, why it is more advanced than even United States of America, is actually because a pandemic very similar to this, right? I like to draw the comparison between the current COVID-19 to, the SARS that hit China 17 years ago. And this is exactly what happened. E-commerce didn't really take off until, post SARS in 2004. That's what made Jackpot, right? So people are forced to change. People are forced to go online. I mean, look at the amount of merchants went onto the Grab in Malaysia, right? During the first 3 months. So I would say that it's actually very difficult. People are reluctant, but they have no choice. If anything coming out of this COVID, I would like to say 2 silver linings coming out of this COVID-19 situation. One is people definitely are more, techie, embracing the digital transformation online. Number 2 is, the climate change, right? So people are talking about, American, Biden's going back to the club. So do you know that there's actually 5% less CO2 emission in the entire 2020, but at what cost? It's huge, right? It's huge economic cost. So rather than being forced to change, we need to embrace the change and change proactively by using technology. The previous first question to me is, worry about China taking over. I think Dato Henry made a good point. These days, all these techie giants, all these clouds, right? It's either America or China. You're talking about, the AWS, the Amazon, the Google, Azure, Microsoft, or the Huawei, the Alibaba and Tencent. So my view in Malaysia is, like I said, technology, there's no good or bad, it's neutral. Just embrace and master this technology, but make it applied in the Malaysia relevant sense. And also, with the right leadership, there's a political session just now, right? With the right leadership and governance, making sure this data stay in Malaysia and safeguard people's privacy, foster the trade war. I do think that SME is going to be a key in reviving the economy post-COVID. So that's my 2 cents first, Dato Wei.
Okay, thank you. We know that Fitri is still here. I think this session, we're going to open to all the 3 speakers and more like in a form of a rapid response to this. First of all, it's about the leader of any organization. What would be, among the group of the technologies that we talk about, what would be like a so-called low-hanging fruit for the leaders to look into that they can be familiar with?
Yeah, maybe let me share my perspective working with many large companies that have gone on the digital transformation journey. Very important when you go through a major digital transformation journey, it needs to start from the very top. So it needs to be from the CEO of the company. Idea of having a digital transformation officer, and then the person will run it, and making sure that the project is successful will probably not be the right model. You can have that person just to run the project, but that ownership, sponsorship needs to come from the CEO itself, because when you are doing a digital transformation, it's not about a technology thing, but it is also about the company culture. Because you're changing the change management and all that. And, typically for, like for us, Dato Wei, when we were doing projects many years ago, the end user doesn't want to change. They want the same screen. Even with all the new technology, you put all the bells in, I want the same screen. So it needs to have a buy-in from everybody. So for digital transformation to succeed, it needs to start from the very top. You need to actually get the buy-in and sponsorship, and also it is a cultural change. The company culture needs to change. So if you think you're not going to address it, then potentially the projects are not going to be successful. But the reality is, I think if you look at digital transformation, cloud computing will play a big role. For example, when we did the Tabung Haji upgrade of their finance procurement, it took us 7 months because we use cloud computing, SaaS, and guess what? No more customization. It is all configuration. With cloud computing, it's all about configuration, no more customization. If you need to do it because of regulatory requirements, you do it as an extension on top of the technology layer. But the reason is once you do cloud-based projects, a lot shorter and success rate goes up. And then plus, you can communicate using the mobile phone and all that, employees or customers, I think. And then you got machine learning, robots and all that I think is in there. And also it gives you an opportunity to be more data-driven, where the analytics come in. How do you do cross-sell, upsell? And till today, I think a lot of the banks have not done a very good job in terms of cross-selling and upselling. They got different systems running their higher purchase and all that. And even after 40, 50 years, the banks are still struggling in terms of cross-selling, upselling. So those are my perspective. I think, some of the success criteria, I think, for people to embrace on this digital transformation journey.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Yeah, for the journey of the digital transformation starts from the very top, because that involves the change of the entire culture, the mindset, the people, and therefore the whole organization. And a quick way to start is to look at the cloud model, because from cloud, then you drive a lot of other things. Cloud is configuration based, then you go into the big data analysis and data analytic, all this will come in. Right. Thank you, Fitri, for that.
Okay.
So could we have Matthew also to take the same question?
Maybe I would like to give a piece of advice, maybe some of the lessons learned from China, right? So in the Malaysia context, I think unlike China, I mentioned in China, you have like super apps such as WeChat, the super app, right? Which commands over 1 billion people. Malaysia, we have many silos, a lot smaller, albeit digitalized already, but there are different silos. Because Malaysia, obviously, unlike China, China's one huge homogeneous country, right? Malaysia, there are many diversities, different culture, ethnic backgrounds, even the variety of food is so different. So in all sectors, I think there's many, but smaller cycles, but albeit digitalized already or on the way, in the process of being digitalized. So which begs the question, which makes the connection and the collaboration even more important, right? So like I said, it's all about data, right? It's all about how you're going to share the data. It's all through collaboration and connections. So technology, again, I like to stress there's no good or evil technology, right? Can help these silos to connect more seamlessly, right? We're talking about, Dato Wei, you mentioned about, 4G, 90%, 99%, 5G, a prototype. It definitely, who knows, before we die, there might be 6G, 7G. Everything is smart enough. So no longer people just using the smartphone device as the only one portal, right? There might be wearable device. People are talking about smart cars already. China is pumping so much money into driverless cars, right? This is definitely the future. We're talking about, the climate change. So by 2050, there will be no car running on the road, burns petrol anymore. So your imagine your cars going to have a lot more computing power than your mobile phone, right? So that's your personal mobile computers everywhere. You can talk to your car. You can probably apply a micro loan through you talking to your car. So this is the future. Embracing this technology in Malaysia context, collaborate, especially the silos, alone, you're not going to thrive. By collaborate and across segments, even across border, Malaysia, why not lead, being the ASEAN leader, I think in terms of all the infra sophistication, definitely we are more advanced than Thailand, Indonesia, why not being that's why I really, going back to the RCEP, right? Being the leader in the ASEAN country and the lead that, cross-border trade corridor, utilizing, things like blockchain and cloud computing, and foster the trade world. That would be my advice in the Malaysia context.
Yeah, well, thank you very, very much for your suggestion. That is to connect and collaborate within the country, across industry, as well as internationally. Thank you for the input and recommendation, Matthew. Could we also invite Dr. Henry to take the same question, please?
I think in that context, I have nothing really exceptionally to share, but I think really to say that what Matthew or what Fitri mentioned is really relevant, I would say. But however, of course, Malaysia, I would say that it's not to say China is not liberal, but I think Malaysia is extremely liberal in terms of our markets. That's why we have extremely a lot of players. I think one part that Malaysia can do a little bit better is probably more of our technology companies work together more. I think there's something that coming from as an industry player, I believe that if there's more collaboration, it will be better. I can see that a lot of IT companies now are trying to bring technology in by actually working with foreign companies, where else they're not looking at saying that how can we joint venture with local companies and then having our own R&D to focus on that. I think there's something that is really tough. I mean, just say, for example, I mean, I think there's a point where, I mean, Touch and Go Digital works with Alipay. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's exceptionally fine. But I really think that if there are more collaboration with the local companies to develop what it needs to be developed, I think it can be done as well. Maybe there's an area of more encouragement in terms of local companies working in local companies in the area of research and development. And then our products would definitely be better, if not more comparable, because even at my digital initiative, I mean, we're talking about 5G and things like that, but I think in terms of technology, in terms of content, I mean, not to say Netflix kind of content, but then the fluid to be on those pipes are generally, I would say, probably 99% coming from companies out of Malaysia, like coming from China or from the US, for example, but Malaysia technology or Malaysia products and services going through those pipes is going to be quite limited. And how do we focus on building that portion? Maybe something that, the government can more emphasize on.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Henry. So I think it's clear that you champion the interests of a Malaysia digital company. So therefore, that call for that kind of support, as well as the recognition that Malaysia technology could also be kind of brought to that level, that could also be more meaningful in contributing towards developing our digital future. So the last so-called rapid fire question for everyone to just use 20 seconds to say one biggest opportunity ahead with the Mind Digital. All right. So just 30 seconds or 20 seconds each, one biggest opportunity ahead in Mind Digital. All right. So could we start with Dato Henry first?
Yeah, I think 5G and talent development is a really big opportunity for Malaysia. Yeah.
All right. And that Matthew?
I think potentially Malaysia can lead largest, halal trade corridor on this planet if it's connect with all the, all the right countries with the right leadership to support SME.
Right. And then Fitri?
Yeah, my view, I think the key focus for digital is on the talent development. I think that is most important. That we do it right. I think is on the talent development in Malaysia. Yeah.
Wow, great session. So with that, we come to on the dot. This is the digital accuracy 3:15. We are coming to the conclusion of this session. I would like to thank our all the speakers. Of course, Chinese has just left us earlier, and then Fitri, thank you very much. Matthew, thank you very much. And Dr. Henry Goh, thank you very much. We do have bright digital future, and stay on. So we will move on to the next session. Again, thank you very much, all our panel speakers and all the listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dato Wei.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.